The year is 1996, and fans of the just-released first installment of Game of Thrones are still reasonably confident that George R.R. Martin will be able to finish his series. It was the year when Jerry Maguire showed us the money, the royal marriage was called off, and the Spice Girls wanted you to tell them what you want, what you really, really want. But we're not here to slam our bodies down and wind it all around, because today we're going to be counting down Electronic Gaming Monthly's worst reviewed games of 1996. Zig-a-zig-ah. When it's 1996 and you feel like you absolutely must release a fighting game, I don't blame developers for throwing ideas at the wall in hopes of finding something that sticks. And when your idea is to get a bunch of famous monsters together to fight it out, then I can see why people might be excited. But boy, oh boy, was Battle Monsters a misfire. And it's not just bad, but also tacky. At least, that's the word Sushi X kept using in his review. Who forgot to tell Acclaim that the Saturn is a 32-bit machine? I guess some people have been searching for a cure for happiness, starts Dan Shu. He was not impressed by the gameplay, characters, and graphics, which he said were worse than Way of the Warrior. Sean Smith agreed. From the intro sequence all the way up to the cheesy gameplay, Battle Monsters screams bad. I thought these lame digitized fighters died with a 3DO. Nobody was impressed with this mess, which is why Battle Monsters managed to average a pitiful 3.5 out of 10. But here's a depressing fact. It wasn't the worst fighting game of the year, as you'll soon see. Longtime fans of these EGM countdowns will remember the bad old days when 8-bit flight sims would always fill up the lists. If you thought you were getting a reprieve from that torture in the 32-bit era, then let me introduce you to Strike Point on the PlayStation. This is a pretty lousy game, starts Sean. The graphics were decent, but nothing spectacular by any means. And that's coming from a guy who only kinda disliked it. Dan hated the game, pondering this thought. I would like to know just how games like Strike Point make it as far as the store shelves. The opening cinema is sadly the only good part of the game. Believe it or not, Sushi X hated it even more, giving the PlayStation 1 game a 2. Let's get this over with, folks. I found one interesting point in Strike Point. You can change the color of your helicopter. Yep, that's it. I had to look at the back to see if the game was originally an NES game and was a spectacular 32-bit port. Oof. With all these bad scores, Strike Point averaged a sad 3.5 out of 10. Bubsy 3D is the reason that Bubsy the Bobcat has a bad name. Sure, the other games didn't help, but the first and only 3D outing turned the middling mascot character into an internet joke. Looking back at the reviews published in Electronic Gaming Monthly, it's easy to see why everybody turned on the Bobcat. At a time when everybody was blown away by Super Mario 64, Bubsy 3D was the poster cat for what not to do. No, yelled Sushi. This is not how you treat a perfectly good mascot. Crispin was just as harsh, complaining that the graphics were too plain, the gameplay is bad, and the animation is too choppy. Only the marginally likable two-player mode saves Bubsy 3D from a lower score. The bad gameplay seems to be the one thing uniting the reviews, even Dan's higher than expected 4.5 take. Bubsy is very hard to control in 3 dimensions. You can run around, but maneuver quickly? Forget about it. Bubsy 3D is a bad game, which is why nobody should be surprised that it averaged a lame 3.25 out of 10. When Street Fighter II blew up, you started to see other companies wanting to get a piece of the action. And then when those fighting games became hits, even more jumped in. 1996 was peak saturation for also-ran fighting games, and Lobo by Ocean is one of the worst offenders. It's a gritty comic book adaptation from a studio best known for making terrible platformers based on blockbuster movies. To say that Ocean was a little over their head would be an understatement, and maybe a little too on the nose. Lobo is such a cool comic book hero. I feel that it's just a shame that he appeared in a half-developed fighting game like this. That's a frustrated Sushi X. The title only has a handful of fighters and suffers from some crippling design problems, such as the fact that you can only play as Lobo in the one-player mode. Crispin warned that you should keep your distance from this bottom-of-the-barrel fighting game, and Dan complained that it's not that fun. No matter if you're playing with the original 3-button pad or the new 6-button controller, nothing could save Lobo from earning a laughable average of 2.9 out of 10. When we look back at the kinds of games that normally end up being the worst reviewed titles of the year, we start to notice a trend. In 1989, it was Friday the 13th, followed by games like Total Recall and Cliffhanger. And when it's not a crappy movie game, it's usually a third-person crash that failed to take advantage of the hardware. But this year is different, because 1996 marks the first time a Nintendo-published game topped the worst list. The game in question is Killer Instinct on the Game Boy, a questionable port that nobody liked. It's one thing to port the 64-bit fighting game to the Super NES, but the outdated Game Boy was a very rickety bridge too far. Nintendo really butchered this game when they converted it over to the Game Boy, starts Andrew. He complained that the graphics are pixelized beyond reasonable limits and that you can't differentiate between weak and strong hits, making many special moves impossible to do. Mark agreed, arguing that the character animations are a joke, the graphics are hideous, and the sound is much more pleasant turned off. Even with Mike and Sushi X giving the game a pair of generous 3s, Killer Instinct only managed to average an awful 2.5 out of 10. This was not only the worst game of 1996, but also the worst reviewed Nintendo game of all time. Hey, thanks for watching us count down EGM's worst games of 1996. We post new episodes of this series every Wednesday. Well, most Wednesdays. Okay, some Wednesdays. So here's the question I have for you. What's your least favorite game of 1996? Just in case you're wondering, some other games that narrowly missed this list include Iron Man and Exo Manowar and Heavy Metal, Crazy Ivan, Battle Arena Toshinden Remix, Alone in the Dark, X-Men 3, Ninja Masters, and Shockwave Assault. Let me hear your picks in the comments below. We'll be back tomorrow with a short video talking about the future of this series, which may include you. We also have more reviews coming, promise. In the meantime, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.